Hello everyone, this is Pooka and welcome to the finals of the Castleton, Indiana City Championship Day 3 of the Indianapolis Mini City Marathon. And in this finals matchup, we have Adam Vernola on the left. We saw him win his top 4 match against me. Yay. So yeah, I am in the finals of this. So once again, this will be more of a first-person kind of a commentary. I will just be trying to guide you through my thought process and telling you what's going on in the match, and we'll see how it goes. So I will be able to go first this game, which is always very important. That's a big advantage in itself. Now, this matchup as a whole is kind of a weird one. Now, Adam will be using a Rayquaza Eelektrik deck, which just aims to power up Rayquaza EX using Dragon Burst every turn. And yeah, pretty much just going for the big one-hit knockout every turn. And I'm using my Ho-Oh deck, so we'll see how this all works out here. There's a lot of different dynamics in this matchup, including the card I'm going to search for right now, which is Landorus EX. Now this card is specifically for this matchup. You know, I play a lot of different Pokemon in this deck. A lot of them are aimed to do certain things in certain matchups, and Landorus, of course, is for this matchup, so it can knock out Dynamo. So I just Ultra Ball for that right away. I discard a Tool Scrapper and an N. I don't expect Adam to play too many Eeveelites in that deck. It's a card that's kind of been phased out in electric decks. Maybe he'll play 1 or 2 at most, but I don't think it'll even be that relevant if he does retain his Eeveelites, because usually those are just important for stuff like against Darkrai, where you can Tool Scrapper their Eeveelite and then knock out a Darkrai in one hit with Terrakian's Retaliate. So it's not even going to be an issue here. So I am hoping to draw either a Switch plus a Fighting or a Catcher plus a Double Colorless, and I whiff. I really would have liked to get a turn 1 knockout on a Dynamo there, but I will take just using an X-Ball for 40 on a Victini, because I'm going to be able to Hammerhead that for a knockout at some point with that Landorus I have there. So I don't mind this too much. Of course, I would always prefer to knock out Adam's Dynamos if possible, but in this situation, it just wasn't going to happen. Now, the goal for this matchup for me is going to be target down those little guys. And Adam gets a nice start here with a Juniper discarding a bunch of Lightning Energy. That's kind of scary to see on the first turn. But yeah, my goal is going to be to knock out those Dynamos before they evolve, and Adam actually tries to evolve on the first turn there, which you cannot do. That would have been kind of scary. A turn 1 Dynamotor. Oof. I don't even want to think about the possibilities with that. I just want to inform everyone that this was the 3rd day of a long Cities weekend. So Adam and I are both pretty exhausted at this point. I got very little sleep over this weekend, and we're just kind of running on fumes at this point, so I don't think the play will be perfect. We're going to have some problems here and there, but overall this is still going to be a great match between two of the very competitive decks in the format, I feel. I don't know if people would consider these decks Tier 1 at this point, but I feel like the decks in this format are pretty even, and there's not much disparity between, you know, the Tier 1 decks and the Tier 2 decks. I think everything just kind of has a chance. All the matchups are kind of even for the most part. So Adam puts down that Fire Energy on the Rayquaza EX. He could have gone for a Thunder Wave instead with a Dynamo. I think he made a better move by not doing that, because if I just had a Switch, I could have used Hammerhead with Landorus, and then I would just knock out a Dynamo and Victini and take 2 prizes immediately. Instead, he rushes in with Keldeo EX, which is a nice tech in his deck, and it helps him out a lot. And you can see there's something going on with the judges here. Basically, what they pointed out was some of Adam's sleeves were a different shade. I know pretty much everyone who's used sleeves ever has probably encountered this at some point. So, especially with Ultra Pro, it seems pretty common. Dragon Shield I've noticed as well. sometimes, even though you buy the same sleeves, they look a little different. In this case, some of Adam's cards, they are a darker shade of black, so you can kind of tell them apart if you really look closely. And the judges were just saying that, we just noticed this now. If you look at this from the right angle, you can tell that these cards are different. But, that's just kind of how it is. It's not something Adam did intentionally. Sleeves are just made poorly, unfortunately, a lot of the time. And this is not a problem that... I don't feel like people should be punished for this. In this match, I just said, no, I don't care at all. I'm sure some of my sleeves are probably the same way. I don't notice. So, I just let it blow over and say, you know what, no, I don't need any action taken here. Let's just play the match out. I'm sure Adam doesn't know what 10 cards he has that are different from, the other 50 that are, the other shade. So, in the end, it's not that big of a deal. If someone really, really tried to cheat, I'm sure they could take advantage of this, but I really don't see it happening. It's just unfortunate that that's the way sleeves are designed, and, it's kind of a pain that had to come up here, but I'm not too concerned about it, so we just play on. The day is long enough. I don't want to draw this out for any silly little things like that. Props to the judging staff for noticing that, though. That took a keen eye to, notice at the very least. But at the end of the day, I don't really care enough to make a big deal out of it. So, on my turn, I got to switch to my Landorus EX and a Hammerhead to knock out the Victini. The reason I'm doing that is because I only play one Landorus EX, and I also didn't have a catcher. So, I'm just thinking, alright, I'm going to take my free prize while I can. I could go for a Dynamo, but I feel like that's probably not the right thing to do. Because, number one, I could actually get paralyzed by a Dynamo using Thunder Wave, and that's going to be annoying, because I've already used a switch. I don't want to fall into that kind of a lock. So that's one thing. Number two, I don't know if Adam plays like a Max Potion or anything like that, and if he does, that prize, that Victini, that could just be gone at some point. So I don't want that to happen either. So I decided to just Hammerhead, knock out the Victini, take my prize, and the other reasoning is that I actually don't have a supporter in my hand. So, I just want to get a prize to maybe get a supporter out of there. I'm just kind of fishing for new cards. So that's my reasoning behind going for the Dynamo. Instead of just, that's the reasoning for going after the Victini, sorry. Instead of the Dynamo. Now, overall, my goal is going to be to catch out Dynamos. That has to be my number one goal here. But, other than that, taking prizes is pretty good. In this matchup, I'm just trying to map out where I'll get my 6 prizes. And can I do it before he does? So I'm going to play a Super Scoop Up here to get that out of the active spot, and I get heads. I had a switch and a Super Scoop Up in hand. I decided that the Super Scoop Up is going to be unreliable, so I want to save my certain switch for a better time. Which means, I don't know if Super Scoop Up's going to do what I want when I want it to. So I want to use the Super Scoop Up now. I'm pretty much just going to be knocked out in one hit, no matter what in this matchup. There are going to be very few situations where Adam actually knocks me out in 2 hits, so that Super Scoop Up's not going to be very useful. I will be catchered frequently, though, so the switch will be more useful in those situations. But we'll see. Now I decide to go to the Landorus and Hammerhead. I go to the Landorus because it is an Eviolite. That's going to make it tougher for Adam to get a knockout. And I decide to hit the Keldeo for another 30, and then a Dynamo for 30 as well. Basically just kind of setting up for, like I said, my 6 prizes. Now I've already taken 1. I'm thinking at some point I'm going to be able to knock out this Keldeo EX. It's got 60 damage on it. That's going to be 2 prizes at some point. So, I'm thinking I'll be able to get rid of that at some point. That's 2 more prizes. So that means I have to take 3 knockouts over the course of the game. Now, if Adam doesn't knock out this Landorus EX, I'm for sure going to get a knockout next turn. I did have a Juniper in my hand. I decided not to play it because I had both a Switch and a DCE in my hand. So, those were cards I did not feel like I wanted to get rid of right now. And I also had a Terrakion. So, those were things that I didn't really want to get rid of. And I decided to just hold on to my hand instead. It looks like this will kind of pay off because Adam is forced to end me anyway. So I don't have to discard those resources. That would have been pretty annoying. But yeah, in terms of how am I going to take all of my prizes? As Adam does catcher out my Mewtwo here. Well, if Adam does not catcher or does not evolve that Tynamo with 30 damage on it, I could get a catcher, and then there's 2 more Tynamos I can knock out. That'll get me down to 3 prizes, which means I only have to knock out 1 EX and then 1 Tynamo or Eelektrik to win the game. Now Adam decides to switch to his Tynamo. I'm not sure why he did this. I suppose he can just rush in anyway, but Switch seems like a card he actually wants to draw off of this end because, well, he needs to Dynamotor to Rayquaza, attach, and then switch so that he can get all the necessary energy to use Dragon Burst this turn. So I'm not sure why he did that, to be honest. I think Switch is probably a card he wants to save, but maybe not. Yeah, I'm not sure. So he's going to Ultra Ball for an Eelektrik, I would think. And I would assume he'll evolve the active one because it's got the 30 damage on it. But oh, it looks like he's deciding to evolve a benched one instead. So this might have been a small error on Adam's part, not evolving the active one. You always want to evolve the one that has damage on it, because otherwise you open yourself up to that double Tynamo knockout from Landorus using Hammerhead, which is a bummer. Not sure how else to put it. But okay, he drew another switch anyway, and we're going to see a Dragon Burst for a knockout. So Adam's actually going to take the lead here, and you can see just how powerful Rayquaza EX is still. Electric decks are still very strong. They are not going away anytime soon. And this game should just kind of prove that. Now, I do have a catcher this turn. I'm deciding, alright, how am I going to get my remaining 5 prizes? I'm going to catcher up the Tynamo with no damage on it. And then I'm going to end Adam down to 4. Pretty much I'm just going to hope that he runs out of ways to knock me out in one hit. The Eviolite is very important here. It's going to allow me to survive a 3 energy Dragon Burst, unless he has a Tool Scrapper. So, I'm saving Eviolite for my EXs in this matchup. I could put them on things like Terrakion or Sigilyph, but I'm thinking that EXs are just going to be my easiest way to victory, and I need to protect them from being knocked out in one hit by, like, Rayquaza. So, yeah. Now, I'm going to be able to Hammerhead. I'll hit the Tynamo for 60 on the active spot, and then the other one for 30. So, again, I think that Adam did make a mistake there. Just, I'm not sure why he didn't evolve the Tynamo with 30 on it. It just seems a little puzzling to me. I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm not thinking about. But basically I got a free prize there for nothing. Whereas it would have been an Eelektrik with 60 damage on it instead, which I'm probably not going to be able to knock out. Because, again, I only run this one Landorus EX, so I can't set up plays for later thinking, alright, even if this Landorus gets knocked out, I'll just Hammerhead another one. I don't have that luxury. I just have to take the knockouts when I can. So that's why my plays might be a little more straightforward instead of planning for the future. Now, Adam, he promotes his Rayquaza EX. I guess it's to Dynamotor to his Keldeo EX. I guess he could use Secret Sword or something like that, which is going to be nice against Landorus. So he's going to Dynamotor 1 to the Keldeo. And then he'll have a Prism as well. So that means he can attach a second Prism, rush in, and then Secret Sword, and the Eevee actually going to save my life. It's gonna survive. It's gonna make Landorus EX survive with 20 hit points because this Secret Sword is doing 90. It's got 2 energy that provide water, those 2 Prism, so it's 50 plus 40 times 2, which is 180 damage, but minus 20 for the Eevee. So you can see just how important Eevee is, why this card is played so often in decks, why it is so good. Just this one little tool just saved me 2 prizes. And I think I might lose this game if I don't have that. So you can see the importance of like a tool scrapper as well. Now, obviously I'm going to need a switch here to knock out Adam's Keldeo EX. All I got to do is switch into Mewtwo, and I'll be able to knock him out with that. And that's going to be 2 more prizes. I'll go down to 1. He didn't play a supporter the previous turn, so I'm thinking he doesn't have an N in his hand, but, he might. We'll see, though. So I'm definitely planning on computer searching for a switch this turn. And pretty much I'm just trying to play down my hand as much as possible. I'm trying to discard useless cards from my deck, if I can. So here I'm just thinking, alright, what are the cards that I do not want in my deck anymore? And, yeah, I don't want that anymore. It's only going to get me 1 card. The Mewtwo, I'm probably not going to need it. I might have been able to just bench it to get it out of my hand. That could have been a better option, perhaps. Depends on what else is in my hand. But I'm going to go ahead and computer search for those 2. Or discarding those 2. And I'm grabbing a switch. Now, I think the better move would have been to discard energy and the N, and then bench my Mewtwo. Thins out an extra card. I'm probably going to play the plus power and then play the Bianca, trying to get another Ultra Ball and discard more useless cards. And also, I don't know for sure that he'll end me. So, I also want to draw into a catcher. So I'm going to Bianca for 4 cards here. And I do get another Ultra Ball. I get a Tool Scrapper as well. These are more cards that I want right now so I can play them. And yeah, I'm going to Tool Scrapper away his Eviolite. That doesn't really do much at this point, but it's another card that I got rid of that I don't want to draw off an end to 1. So there's that. And let's see. So I have another. Sorry, it's been a long day already, but I'll be able to speak. Don't worry, guys. This is only the first game. Jeez. Alright, so I'm going to Ultra Ball away a Lightning and an Energy Switch. And I'm just going to grab probably a neutral Pokemon that I'm not worried about benching. Which in this case will be a Bouffalant. I'm either going to grab Bouffalant or Tornadus EX. I really don't think it makes a difference. I might as well just grab Bouffalant because it's not an EX. And I'll put that down there. And you never know, Gold Breaker could come in handy. So yeah, again, this whole process is about thinning my deck out. Thinning out the bad cards. Trying to draw what I need to win the game. You see a lot of people neglect this aspect of the game. When N is in the format, a lot of people complain about being N to 1 and then not drawing what you need. And yeah, sometimes that just happens, You don't draw what you need off your N to 1, you lose the game. That happens. But what a lot of people fail to realize is that you can actually take some measures to prevent that. You can start discarding cards from your hand that you don't need anymore. Think, if you have an Ultra Ball, and, 2 cards that you really don't want to draw off an N to 1, so you got, an extra Pokemon that you don't want to draw anymore, stuff like that, then, just discard it. Then you don't have to worry about drawing it. And that's just kind of what I was trying to do that turn. Now, I could still lose this game, believe it or not. Adam's going to end me to 1 like I thought. He's going to catch out this Landorus EX. He'll be able to use Dragon Burst for 60, which will be enough to knock me out. He'll only do 40 because Eviolite, but still enough to knock me out. And then next turn, he could actually pull off like a double switch. So he would have to switch Dynamotor to his Rayquaza EX, and then switch again, and then he could get 3 energy on there and Dragon Burst me for the knockout. Now, obviously, if I don't have the win next turn, I'm not going to be putting my Mewtwo into harm's way, so there's no point in doing that. So I would force him to have a catcher as well. But it still could happen. I could still lose. Even though it's 4-1, I could still lose. Obviously, I win the game if I draw a catcher, because I can just knock out an Eelektrik. And it looks like he's actually going to Dynamotor twice to an Eelektrik. Now, this is a smart move, because now he only needs 1 switch to power up his Rayquaza EX next turn. So he can switch to that Eelektrik, Dynamotor twice to the Rayquaza, and then retreat, attach a Lightning, and then Dragon Burst for the game. So I'm thinking about setting up Mewtwo. I decided to do it, but I draw a Juniper. So this is the perfect card to draw off of an end to 1, of course, and there is the catcher. So we have a Pokemon catcher, and then I get to knock out an Eelektrik for my last prize. I can do it with Mewtwo or Terrakion Retaliating, and there we go. So I'll end up taking a fairly close game 1. You know, the prize count didn't make it look like it was close, but it was. I was 1 turn away from losing. You know, if I didn't draw the catcher that turn, it was going to be rough. I would have had to do, I don't know. I would have had to cross my fingers that Adam didn't have everything he needed. And maybe he did. So there's that. I'm going to take a 1-0 series lead. I'm still not sure how I feel about the matchup. You know, it's not a matchup I tested much going into this tournament. But I managed to get the first game in, you know, kind of a feeling out process where I'm just trying to figure out what all is in Adam's deck, how I feel the matchup will go, and stuff like that. So that's the first game, and we'll skip past the shuffling and head right into game number 2. Alright, so heading into game number 2, basically I'm going to approach this the same way. You know, ideally I want to go for Landorus EX as soon as possible, and kind of just figure out a way to get 6 prizes if I can. Obviously I want to take out the Electrics, but if that's not an option, I want to try to use non-EX attackers to take out his EXs. But then I start with the Ho-Oh, and everything goes downhill. So, yeah, not the greatest start. Ho-Oh, of course, he is a great energy accelerator. Rebirth is an awesome ability. I think it's maybe one of the best abilities in the format. Starting with it, not so much. The 160 hit points, the 2 retreat cost, the expensive attack. None of it really bodes well for starting Pokemon. This is always what you fear when you play Ho-Oh, but we'll see if I can get past it and overcome this unfortunate start. I mean, it's going to happen. Honestly, it's going to happen. You run enough Ho-Ohs in your deck, you're going to start with one eventually. I actually started with 2 in my hand. I'm not going to play down both, obviously, but you just got to deal with it. You know, it doesn't always mean you lose. It's bad, don't get me wrong. It's very bad, but it doesn't mean anything. And we did see Adam had a decent start. He computer searched and then Ultra Balled for another Dynamo, and then he's going to Juniper for 7, and then Level Ball as well. So he's going to grab a 3rd Dynamo. Now, this is going to be rough. I mean, turn 1, he's got 3 Dynamos out. This could mean all sorts of stuff turn 2. I could just get Dragon Bursted back to the Stone Age turn 2. And there's a Rayquaza EX, just to prove my point, with a Prism. So, maybe he's not playing the Prism. I don't know what he's doing here. He's already got 1 Lightning in the discard pile. So he does have 3 Ultra Balls in there, though. So it's actually going to be pretty tough for Adam to get energy in the discard pile at this point. He still has Juniper, obviously, to discard cards, but overall, it's not going to be as simple for him to get those Lightning in the discard pile. He's already got 1, though, so it's not the end of the world. On the other hand, if you could see my hand, it's got all sorts of not good things. So I'm going to Ultra Ball away a plus power and a Ho-Oh. to at least get a Ho-Oh in the discard pile, so I could maybe rebirth at some point. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be getting another Ho-Oh in the discard pile the hard way, which would be getting it knocked out. That is a way to get it in the discard pile. It's not the preferred method, but I think that will happen at some point. It's just 2 free prizes waiting to happen. So yeah, I actually don't have a supporter in my hand, so I'm just thinking, alright, what can I do to give myself the best option here? And I decided to go for Terrakion because I had the fighting in my hand. Actually, I had an Ultra Ball for Landorus EX, but he happened to be prized this game. So now that's a little frustrating because, well, I didn't have a Super Scoop Up, so I would have had a flip to get a turn 1 Hammerhead with an Eviolite, which would have allowed me to knock out a Tynamo, put 30 on another one, and then I would have gotten a prize. Maybe I get a supporter. You know, all these things just from having a Landorus EX prized can change the game completely. So now I'm actually not sure what I do in this matchup. I don't have Landorus. That was kind of my go-to guy in this matchup, and he's prized. This is kind of the downside of just playing a bunch of attackers. And I was just making sure. I was tired. I didn't notice if Adam used Dynamotor. I don't know if he attached twice or used Dynamotor. I was just making sure. Because honestly, I probably spaced out. I missed it. But yeah, he did use Dynamotor and attached, so nothing illegal there. And now he's going to use Thunder Wave on my Ho-Oh, which will do 10 and paralyze me with the paralysis. Obviously does not matter here. And hey, a Juniper, okay. So, that is a really nice top deck. So I'm going to go for that Super Scoop Up, and I get Tails. Not so good. We're going to put another fighting onto Terrakion. I got to put the Eviolite somewhere. I guess I'll just put it on Terrakion, because Ho-Oh just kind of gets knocked out by everything anyway. So I'm going to be going for a switch here. If I can grab a switch, then I can retaliate for a knockout. But no. Nope, not happening here. And now I have to decide. Do I want to catch out Eelektrik to try to buy a turn? I decide yes. Force Adam to have a switch. He didn't play a supporter last turn, so I'm expecting him not to really have anything. Maybe he was holding on to an N or something, but there's a good shot he just doesn't have anything. And yeah, if he doesn't have anything, I can win this game pretty easily. And it looks like he's just going to attach to Eelektrik and pass, so this is not a bad spot for me. I got to make a decision here. I got a whole bunch of stuff in my hand and a Juniper. So I got to decide, do I want to attach the double colorless and retreat? And it looks like that's what I'm going to do. So I got a Bianca and a Juniper, or maybe just a couple Biancas. This is where Bianca can backfire. You know, if you had Charon instead, it might be a little different. So I'm just going to retreat to Terrakion and then retaliate for 60. I don't know if this was the right move, but it seems pretty unlikely that Adam pulls off a Dragon Burst for a knockout this turn. Number one, he doesn't even have energy in the discard pile. Number two, he didn't play a supporter last turn, and he's only got 1 Eelektrik out. So he does top deck an N, though, and he catches out Ho-Oh, so I might be going down 2 prizes here. That could happen. He still needs to draw like a switch, though. Like he would need to retreat to a Dynamo and then switch after he Dynamotors. And he actually also needs a second Eelektrik, so I'm not too worried. He would have to draw 6 pretty nice cards. He'd need to draw, well, he needs a second Eelektrik and a switch, basically, to knock me out. If he does that, Adam is well in the lead. I don't lose by any means, but I am behind for sure. But who knows? Anything could really happen here. He could just retreat and pass for all I know. So he's going to take a look and see, alright, there are no lightning in my discard pile. Looks like he does have a switch, so there's that to work with. I don't know if he has an Eelektrik, though. Again, he discarded 3 Ultra Balls on the first turn, so he just doesn't have access to searching cards, and the computer search as well. So 4 of his ways to search for cards are gone, and he also used a level ball on the first turn, so really all of his searching cards are kind of gone at this point. And I'm just kind of hoping that I can overrun him before he gets any sort of a massive setup. Now he's just going to retreat to his Dynamo. And it looks like we're going to have a Thunder Wave and a Max Potion. Alright, that's actually pretty annoying. That wasted my turn of using Retaliate, which is, of course, a bummer for many reasons. Number one being, if I ever got my Landorus out of the prizes, I would have been able to just get a free Hammerhead knockout for 30 on that thing. But the way things are now, it's not there anymore. Now this turn, it looks like once again I just don't have a supporter, which is a bummer, honestly. That is not good. Supporters are good. Not having supporters is bad. Yeah, I don't have many options to work with. I have a Mewtwo in my hand, I have Bouffalant, I have really not much. And this is a much slower game than the first one, that's for sure. This is a game where neither of us really have anything going for us. And, I mean, we're both struggling mightily to get anything going. You know, if I top decked a switch there, I would have been able to switch, retaliate, knock out a Dynamo. Would have been all peachy for me. But now I just don't have anything. Now Adam decides to catch out my Terrakion here. He's used 2 catchers at this point, so it's kind of a curious decision. Why not just take the 2 prizes on the Ho-Oh? You could just take 2 prizes. You know, you get retaliated, but is it really that big of a deal? I don't think so. Instead, he wastes a catcher to knock out a Terrakion that's only worth 1 prize. Sure, Ho-Oh's not going to be attacking you anytime soon, but now I'm pretty much just going to play the prize denial game. And by that I mean I am going to make it so that he has to knock out a lot of non-EX Pokemon. Since he's already burned a lot of his catchers, my EXs eventually will be safe on the bench. And then I'm going to wait till he gets down to like 1 prize and then start using EXs. That's going to be my plan here. I play enough non-EX Pokemon to be able to do that. Now the Terrakion does go down. So Bouffalant's going to have to come up. I do have a double colorless in my hand. So there is that option for me. I'm going to bench Mewtwo as well because my Bouffalant could be knocked out. And if that's the case, then I need to have a backup attacker. I don't want to just push up another Ho-Oh. I don't want to do that. So Bouffalant's going to be really nice here. I can Gold Breaker for 100. And then if he doesn't actually knock me out this turn, that's a huge win for me. I'm going to be able to trade pretty much, I get 2 free prizes. And he only knocked out the Terrakion with a Rayquaza, so I come out on the winning end of that ordeal. Now he does random receiver for an N, so I get pretty lucky there if he has to play that N. Obviously my hand is complete garbage. Steaming hot garbage, that is my hand. But he does have a catcher, so he could catch out Ho and get those 2 prizes this turn. But if he's going to do that, then like, what was the point of the catcher the previous turn? So yeah, I don't really know. Adam's got a lot of decisions to work with in his hand, and he's actually going to decide to end me, which is huge. It's 6 cards in my hand, but I don't think he really had much of a choice. In order to knock me out, he would have needed a whole bunch of stuff. He only actually has 1 Eelektrik out there, so that's hurdle number 1. Hurdle number 2 is getting the Rayquaza to the bench, and then back to the active spot, because Dynamotor only puts energy on benched Pokemon. So, I really don't think I'll be knocked out this turn. I don't see it happening. Instead, he might, you know, put the Rayquaza on the bench, maybe retreat to Dynamo or something like that. But I do not see myself getting knocked out this turn, which is huge. I mean, having that Bouffalant get 2 hits off with Gold Breaker on an EX, that's 2 prizes. And Bouffalant is not easy to knock out. It's going to take at least 2 energy from a Rayquaza EX, 3 if I put an Eviolite on the Bouffalant because of that Boofer ability. So, Bouffalant is a very, very good card in this kind of a matchup, where Rayquaza EX just isn't that great against it. Sure, it can knock it down 1 hit every turn if you get enough Eelektriks out, but if you only have 1 Eelektrik in play, not as easy as it sounds. Adam also doesn't have like a Sky Arrow Bridge in play either, so there's a problem as well. So he's going to take a look at my discard pile. Honestly, it's a lot of junk. You know, there's a Trakian and a Ho-Oh in there. Only one fighting energy, though. He decides to catch up the Ho-Oh, so this is a third catcher gone already. Which, I mean, again, that's big for me. Now EXs on my bench are going to be safe. I don't have to worry about them being knocked out at all. Because he'll run out of catchers. He only has one left at this point. He's using it to stall for time, but, I mean, that's fine. I don't think I've played a switch yet, so I'll have that option available as well. So he's going to rush in with Keldeo, Dynamotor to his Rayquaza, and then pass. So at this point, as long as I can switch to Bouffalant this turn, I think I'm doing pretty alright. I'm going to Ultra Ball, discarding a Tornadus EX and another Ultra Ball. Probably just grab a Trakian or a similar non-EX attacker. I guess I could grab Sigilyph as well. That is actually going to be a big Pokemon in this matchup. The Sigilyph is really nice because it can give me the option to kind of wall his EX Pokemon, especially when he's running low on catchers. That's going to force him to attack with Eelektrik, which obviously is not good. But I decided to grab Terrakion this turn instead, and then I'm going to end him. I didn't want to Juniper away my hand, so I'm going to end for a fresh hand of 6, and of course I'm going to be going for a switch, or at least a double colorless to retreat. If I can just knock out the Keldeo this turn, or not knock out, do 120 to the Keldeo this turn with Bouffalant's Gold Breaker, then I'm going to be fine. So, oh, looks like Adam accidentally drew a 6th card off his end. Again, we're tired. It's late. Mistakes will be made. But, yeah, I mean, that's really all I had to say. I wish I had something wittier to say, but I don't. So here I'm going to computer search. Gonna discard a Lightning and a Psychic. I think I'm just kind of doing it to get energy in the discard pile in case he ends me. Might as well do it now. I'm just gonna grab a supporter, I think. Now I could catcher out the Rayquaza EX. Looks like I might do that instead. If I think, well, if I see that there are a bunch of supporters prized, I can actually do this. Play the odds that I'm gonna grab a supporter out of my prizes. It's actually something you can do if you know what your prizes are. So this is just something also to keep in mind when you're playing a game like this. When you have decisions like this, you can do this with Skyla as well. The more of these decisions that appear in games, I think the better for the game it is. So alright, I'm going to catch out that Rayquaza EX. Pretty much force him to have a lot of cards off this end in order to knock me out. And then I have a DCE in my hand. But it's an interesting decision on where to play it. Now, if I put it on Mewtwo, I can power up Mewtwo. I don't know if he actually plays his own. And again, I'm trying not to use EXs here. At the same time, powering up a big Mewtwo could win me the game. I could also put it on Terrakion to just power up a Retaliate in the future. It looks like I decided to do that, which is also a fine play. I guess I'm going to go for Rebirth, knowing that, alright, I'm going to probably need this at some point. I have 3 energy in the discard pile, let's go for it, let's just get it into play. It's an ugly bench I have. 2 Ho-Oh EXs, not great. But it is what it is. I figure, might as well just get it into play now. He's used a bunch of catchers already, I don't expect him to have another one. And alright, so I grab a Juniper and my Landorus EX off the prizes, which are huge prizes. So at this point, I feel in pretty good shape, honestly. It's going to take so much for him to get a knockout this turn. And, I mean, it's just so unlikely. He needs so many cards to knock me out this turn. It's not even funny. Now, I guess he could do something with Keldeo EX. That's not something I considered before. If he gets a Prism on the Keldeo EX, and then gets his last catcher for a Ho-Oh, he could actually knock out that Ho-Oh with 20 on it already. That is not something I considered, but he would have needed the second Eelektrik, and then catcher, and then Prism to pull all that off, so I wasn't too worried about it, but he might have it. He did get the second Eelektrik, but it looks like he's just going to attach a Lightning to his Keldeo EX, which is kind of a weird move, and then switch to his Dynamo. Yeah, now he won't be able to knock that out. with Keldeo. So I think this is a big opening for me. He's actually going to Bianca for 6. He's just going to play those 2 switches to get rid of them. So he can draw 6 cards with Bianca. I just make sure that he did attach from the hand on that Keldeo this turn. And he did. So he's going to Dynamo twice. He's only going to be able to Secret Sword for 100 here. And this is huge. I mean, all I got to do is draw a switch. And I get the Gold Breaker that Keldeo for 120. That's so big. That's pretty much just giving me 2 more prizes to win the game eventually. And he's going to put down Rayquaza EX and use his 3rd Dynamotor on that. So we're getting into scary territory here. He can Dynamotor 3 times a turn, which is not good. This is really bad for me. But if I can manage to just knock out 2 more EXs, or even an EX and then 2 Eelektriks, I'm going to end up winning the game. So that's good for me. Adam's going to Super Rod here. He actually ends up putting a Lightning into his deck, which is not the greatest thing in the world, but, you know, it's not that bad. His deck is getting kind of thin, it looks like. It's getting kind of small, so I guess he is just starting to just draw his deck at this point. So I can't be too upset about him drawing all those Eelektriks. You know, he doesn't have many searching cards left, but he's just going to draw into them eventually. So we get a Secret Sword for 100, and basically, I'm feeling great, because if I just draw a switch, if I just draw a double colorless, or if I just draw an energy switch plus an energy off of my Juniper, then I will win the game. Simple as that. I mean, I'm going to win because I can Gold Breaker for 120, and then I just have to do another 50 damage to that Keldeo to knock it out. He has played all 4 catchers. Are you kidding me? That's just a win for me. It's plain and simple. That is going to be a win for me every single time. With what I have out here, I mean, I can just work with that and win the game. So I'm going to put down this Landorus EX. I'm going to Energy Switch before I Juniper, because I did draw a 2nd Juniper, and then draw 7. I decided to put the Fighting onto Landorus EX, thinking that Hammerhead will be useful. And I actually completely whiff on my 7 cards. So, ouch. I could have drawn a switch, I could have drawn a double colorless, I could have drawn an energy switch plus an energy. You know, I probably could have played it safe there. Excuse me, and energy switched and energy up to the active. Looking back, that might have been the safer play, but it just seemed so unlikely that I wouldn't draw one of my many ways to retreat Ho-Oh this turn. And now this is going to be a big swing. This is not good. This is going to be... Ugh. I don't even know how to put this. It goes from me not losing those 2 prizes and being able to Gold Breaker Keldeo EX to Adam taking the lead. And all of a sudden I'm in trouble. He'll be down to 3 prizes. I won't have any clear way to knock him out next turn. He has 3 Eelektriks in play. He's actually got a 4th in his hand. I actually just don't know how to win anymore. That's what that 1 turn was. And knowing how important that was, I probably should have used that energy switch to retreat my Ho-Oh. Just before I Junipered, move 1 up to the active and retreated. Just knowing how important it was to get that out of the active spot, I should have done that. So that was a mistake on my part. I do believe that. But still pretty unlucky to not draw something out of that. Now Adam here, he can really just Secret Sword for a knockout if he wants to. And he has 4 Eelektriks in play. That is 4 Dynamotors every single turn. How do you deal with that? He gets 4 energy in play every turn. What are you supposed to do to deal with that? It's just, it's ridiculous. I don't know how else to put it. Really, I'm just going to be knocked out in 1 hit every single turn. There's nothing I can do about it. He has the Keldeo to rush in, so I can't like stall him with catcher or anything like that. Every turn he can just rush in with Keldeo, Dynamotor to Rayquaza EX, and then I guess he'll just knock me out every turn. I don't know how else to put it. I decided to catch out the Rayquaza to hit it for 70 with Retaliate. or 90 with the Tool Scrapper now. And then Gold Breaker for the knockout. I actually think, looking back, that I might have been better off just hitting the Keldeo. Take that out of the equation and get rid of that whole Russian ability, which allows him to put that into the active spot from the bench. If I can do that, that takes away a lot of his options. I might be able to stall, like bring out an Eelektrik, and then hammerhead it with Landorus, and then set up a 2-prize play that way. But instead I decided to go for the Rayquaza EX. My thought process is pretty simple. It's just, it's going to take you so many cards to put down another Rayquaza EX and a Fire. So if I N you right before I take this knockout, hoping I have an N in my hand, if I N you right before that, and you only get like 2 cards off of it, you're going to need to draw a Rayquaza EX and then a way to provide Fire energy. If you don't, if you miss that turn, then I'll make my comeback. But if you draw everything, I will lose. I actually do lose. So that's actually pretty frightening. And Adam plays an N. Going to put me at 4 cards. That's pretty good. That's going to make it more difficult for me to have an N. It's also going to be probably the best time for him to have an N, because he's going to get 3 cards and then an extra one off the prize, as opposed to it's just going to be, you know, kind of a dead card later on. He is in firm control here. He is the one who just, if he draws everything, he wins. That's the situation we're in. I'm the one who needs to kind of hope he doesn't draw stuff. And it's not always a good strategy. So you can see he's actually kind of low on cards, which is kind of weird to see in this format. But usually games end before someone decks out, that's for sure. Well, who knows? Anything can happen. Anything can happen in Pokemon. So here, I guess I'm just going to get Dragon Bursted for a knockout. And it looks like Adam has the Rayquaza EX in his hand already. So that is pretty bad for me. If he can just draw... He has a random receiver as well. So, I mean, if he can just get a Prism or a Fire and then just get another Rayquaza EX into play, I'll probably end up losing, honestly. I don't see myself winning. Just not going to happen. Okay, so I'm going to get knocked out here by Dragon Burst. And at this point, it looks like Adam just has it sealed up. I mean, how do you combat this kind of a thing? There's just so many Dynamotors. He gets 4 energy back every single turn. It doesn't make sense. He gets to attach 5 energy per turn. 4 from his discard pile. It's just... There's no way to deal with it. I really just have to get lucky at this point if I want to have a chance to win. I don't even know how to get lucky in this situation. It doesn't make much sense. But I'm going to try. I mean, at the very least, I'll try. I don't see myself winning anymore, but I'll give myself the best chance of winning that I can. So here, I'm going to Gold Breaker for a knockout for sure. And we'll go from there. Junipered, hoping to draw... Actually, I don't know what I was hoping to draw. But I do get an Eviolite, so I can put that on to Landorus EX. I actually don't know if that even matters anymore, since you get 4 energy every turn. Pretty much I'm just crossing my fingers saying, please don't have a Rayquaza this turn. Please don't have it and the Fire to attack me. If you don't have both, then I'm going to win. If you do have both and you knock out my Boufflant this turn, I lose. Pretty simple. I just lose. There's no way around it. I'm going to lose. So I'm going to Gold Breaker. We'll take out this Rayquaza EX. And it really just comes down to this turn. If Adam has the Rayquaza EX and the Prism or the Fire, he gets to knock me out. And it looks like he drew the Prism. So that's really just going to be... I mean, it's going to be the game. How do I deal with this? He gets to do, let's see, 4 energy. He gets to do 240 damage every turn. I can't stop him. At this point, knocking out an Eelektrik doesn't really do anything. So he's going to random receiver, and he's going to show me, oh, the last card in his deck is an N, but he's only got 4 cards. It's a Victini, a Rayquaza, a Prism, and I think a Fire. So I guess he had some pretty good odds of getting the Rayquaza EX. But, yeah, at this point, I have pretty much accepted the fact that I will lose. He's going to end me, and us both to 2. I'm going to look for ways out to win, but again, it's just not looking good. Yeah, I don't know. Once Eelektrik decks get set up to this point, it's just not a whole lot you can do. Rayquaza EX obviously is one of the best attackers in the game. Dragon Burst is a ridiculous attack. Not much else needs to be said, but it's going to blow stuff up. It's one mean wrecking machine, that's all there is to it. Alright, so Adam is going to Dynamotor 3 times to his Rayquaza. So we'll go ahead and do that. He actually only needs 2, so he's just going to Dynamotor 2 to the Rayquaza. Then he can retreat the Keldeo for 1, thanks to the Sky Arrow Bridge. The Keldeo is nice with Sky Arrow with the 1 retreat cost. It really just makes it so you don't need to switch a lot of the times, which is really, really nice, in case you get End. It's really a good tech in general. I like it in this deck. But you need Sky Arrow Bridge with it too, otherwise it's not quite as useful. So it's just going to take a Dragon Burst for 2 energy here. And at this point, I am thinking, alright, go Sigilyph. This is the only thing that can survive the turn because it cannot be hit by EXs. So, I'm going to send up Sigilyph and pass. That's really my only option. And we'll see if I can maybe get a fluke win by decking him out or something. It doesn't seem too likely, but that's going to be my way of maybe pulling this one off. I don't know. Not going to be easy. He's got, I think, 4 cards left after that. So, can I stall for 4 turns? That is the question here. I need 4 turns. Alright, so he's going to draw his card. And he's just going to take a look. He realizes, okay, I need to Dynamotor 3 times to Eelektrik so that I can use Electric Ball. He's going to rush in with Keldeo. I think he's just trying to get more energy in the discard pile so he can retreat it. So he'll retreat to Eelektrik. I guess he'll Dynamotor if he wants to. 1 to Rayquaza EX. He does get 4 Dynamotors. So he could go ahead and do that. Looks like he's deciding not to, though. This is kind of a weird situation. Like, it seems like you have all the flexibility in the world with Keldeo. But in reality, if he wants to get energy back in the discard pile, he has to retreat his Eelektrik. And then he would have to... Well, he wouldn't be able to Dynamotor, and... Oh, looks like... Camera got really dark there. I'm not sure what happened there. But, thankfully that came back to life. The problem is he can't retreat twice, basically. So he could retreat and then Dynamotor to Rayquaza, but it has to be on the bench still. So he cannot bring it back active. So he just Electric Balls me for 50. I have nothing to work with in my hand. And, you know what? In the moment, I was just kind of thinking, alright, the only way I'm going to win is to deck him out. There's no other way for me to win. And I pretty much just wrapped my head around the strategy. Like, I need to buy enough turns to deck him out. I figured that was my only way to win. When the reality of the situation was, I actually have the game wrapped up in 2 turns if I see this properly. Because he has no lightning left in his discard pile. He cannot use Dragon Burst this turn to knock me out with... Or I cannot knock out the Landorus. So if I just retreat, Hammerhead, do 60 and 30 to an Eelektrik, then next turn use that catcher to do 60 and 30, I get 2 prizes and win the game. So I messed up immensely here. I think we were getting rushed at this point. You know, time was getting low. The judges were saying we need to make a move. I was trying to figure out this elaborate plan, trying not to lose, and I just overlooked something very simple, which can happen a lot. And I really do think I messed this up. I could have just had an easy win here, just 60-30. And then next turn, catcher, 60-30. There's no way I lose the game, because there's no way. He doesn't have any catchers left. He doesn't have energy in the discard pile. I would have just won. There's no way around it. But instead I had this strategy where I was going to say, okay, he's got no lightning in the discard pile, so I'm going to hit both of his EXs for 30. Now, this is going to allow me to go Hammerhead for 30 and 30 to the Keldeo. So if you attack with either of these to try to set me up for a 2-hit knockout, I'm just going to attach and use Land's Judgment for the game. This was my other plan. The not as good plan. We'll go with that. So now it's Adam's turn. He does have all 4 ends in the discard pile. He has a super rod in the discard pile, so if I can survive enough turns, I will deck him out. So that is an option. But still, I made a mistake not taking those 2 knockouts, and okay, looks like the video cut out. So I do apologize for this. I didn't realize that this happened, but it did. It's pretty embarrassing. But I'll just explain to you what happened. Basically, we got to a point where Adam uses Eelektrik Ball to hit my Lander CX for 10 because it is the Eviolite and the lightning resistance. So it only does 10 damage. And he's only able to get 3 energy on the Rayquaza EX, so he can't quite do enough to knock me out. So what I do is just switch to Sigilyph, put an Eviolite on it, and then pass. He's forced to Eelektrik Ball again, and then I just retreat back to the Landorus EX, and he draws his last card. He is 10 damage short of winning the game. He decks out, and I win a ridiculous game. So I did end up winning this tournament. Congratulations to me. Not sure how else to put that, but yeah, I did end up winning. I feel pretty lucky to have won this tournament. I did go undefeated, which was the beginning of a nice little streak for me. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Sorry the video cut out, and we will have more videos up for you soon, so please stay tuned for those. But I have been Pooka from the Top Cut. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.